إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So we continue today in our second lesson on Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali's Sharh rahimahullah on the hadith of Ibn Ābbās radiyallahu anhuma. And in yesterday's lesson we began with a brief biography of Ibn Ābbās radiyallahu anhu. And when he emigrated with his father to Medina at the age of 11, he spent a number of years in the household of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And given that he was a wise, intelligent young man, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made dua that he be given increase in knowledge, that he be given wisdom, that he be given fiqh, comprehension in the religion. And indeed he was given so. And because this is the madrasa of the Messenger of Allah, like literally in effect Ibn Ābbās is raised in the household of the Messenger of Allah. From the great advices or teachings that he gave to Ibn Ābbās is what is in this particular hadith. And he said to him, "O young man, ya ghulam, I will teach you," he said, "I will teach you a number of words by which you will benefit." And so he began by saying, "Ihfadillah yahfadhk." Safeguard Allah and He will safeguard you. So in yesterday's lesson we looked at this first part of the hadith. And so from that we understood, what does it mean to safeguard Allah? It means to safeguard His commands, His awamir, His prohibitions, the nawahi, and His hudud, which are His limits. And that if you safeguard this, al-jazā'u min jinsil amal, the recompense for a deed is with its like. So then Allah will safeguard you. And He will safeguard you in relation to two things. The first of those is in relation to your dunya. And your dunya means your body, your health, your wealth, your offspring. And so Allah will safeguard and protect all of that for you. However, this is only the lesser of the two protections. The greater of the two protections is actually your religion, that Allah safeguards your religion. And this was understood by the Salaf, because Ibn Rajab mentioned that from the Salaf it was said, that from some of the Salaf, that when it was said about them, Hafizakallah, may Allah protect you, may Allah safeguard you, they said that it is better that you say, may Allah protect your iman, because this is more worthy of protection, meaning the deen, over and above the actual dunya. So the people who are rooted in iman and who are loftier in their intelligence, when they worship Allah and they safeguard the commands, prohibitions and limits of Allah, they are doing so because they seek from Allah that He protect them in their religion, more so that He protect them in their world, even though that is still something that is desirable. So this is what we covered in yesterday's lesson. So obviously protection in the dunya is clear. Protection in the deen is that Allah protects you from the shubuhat and the shahawat, that you are protected from the doubts, the misconceptions, the desires, confusion in the religion, innovation, misguidance, and that Allah protects you from having your iman eroded by sins, by disobedience, and so on and so forth. So that's where we reached in yesterday's lesson, so we'll continue today in the next part of the hadith. وَقَوْلُهُ صلى الله عليه وسلم احفظ الله احفظ الله تجده أمامك وفي رواية أخرى تجاهك. So Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he says معناه أن من حفظ حدود الله وراعى حقوقه ووجد الله معه في جميع الأحوال يحوطه وينصره ويحفظه ويوفقه ويؤيده ويسدده فإنه قائم على كل نفس بما كسبت وهو تعالى مع الذين اتقوا والذين هم محسنون. So Rajab says rahimahullah that the meaning of what does this mean? That if you safeguard Allah, you will find Allah in front of you. So the first part of the hadith, Allah will safeguard you. This part of the hadith, if you safeguard Allah, you will find Him in front of you. The meaning is that whoever safeguards the limits of Allah and observes His rights, he will find Allah with him in all of his affairs, the situations he finds himself in. Allah will protect him, aid him, safeguard him, grant him success, grant him support, direct him to what is right. Why? Because Allah is the one who is, He watches, observes over every soul and what it earns. Yet Allah is with those who fear Him and those who do good. Qatada, rahimahullah, he said, "Man yattaqillaha yakun ma'ah, ومن يكن الله معه فمعه الفئة التي لا تغلب والحارس الذي لا ينام والحادي الذي لا يضل." So he said, whoever fears Allah, then Allah will be with him. And whoever Allah is with, then that person has with him a faction, a party, who can never be overcome. And he has with him a watchful guard who never sleeps. And he has with him the guide who never goes astray. And some of the Salaf, when they would give advice to one of their brothers, they would write a very simple, short, powerful piece of advice, which is literally 1 or 2 sentences. He would say, أما بعد فإن كان الله معك فممن تخاف وإن كان عليك فمن ترجو والسلام. Very simple advice. He said to proceed, if Allah is with you, then who should you fear? From who are you going to fear? And if Allah is against you, then in whom are you going to hope? Wassalam. And the Shaykh says that here, what we've read in these statements, this ma'iyah, that Allah will be with you, Allah will be in front of you, Allah will be with you. This ma'iyah, meaning the nearness of Allah, this is a very specific type of nearness which is for the people of Iman and Taqwa. As we know in our creed, when we speak about Allah and His nearness, the scholars explain there is a nearness, a ma'iyah, that Allah is with in a general sense, in a broad universal sense. Allah is with all of His servants. Allah knows all of what His servants do. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. He is with you wherever you may be. This is general for all of the creation. But as for the ma'iyah, which is khasa, the specific type of ma'iyah, this is one which تقتضي النصر والتأييد والحفظ والإعانة. This is something that necessitates, it brings about aid from Allah, support from Allah, safeguarding from Allah, and assistance from Allah. And we see very clearly here a number of examples from the Quran. We see with respect to Musa alayhi salam and Harun, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He said, لا تخافا إني معكما أسمع وأرى. He said to Musa and Harun, do not fear. Indeed, I am with you, I hear and I see. And similarly, we see that with respect to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and Abu Bakr, when they were fleeing from the pagans of Quraysh, what do we see in the Quran? إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. when he, meaning the messenger, said to his companion, meaning Abu Bakr, do not grieve, do not be sad. Indeed, Allah is with us. And similarly, there are many other ahadith which indicate this ma'iyah of Allah. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he was told by the Messenger of Allah in the same incident, مَا ظَنُّكَ بِاثْنَيْنِ اللَّهُ ثَالِثُهُمَا. What do you think of two of whom Allah is the third? So he said this to Abu Bakr to console him, to strengthen him, and to strengthen his resolve. So these texts, they refer to a very specific type of ma'iyah for the people of Iman, for the people of Taqwa, for the people of al-muhafadha, who safeguard and preserve al-hifdh, safeguard the rights of Allah and the limits of Allah. Whereas the other ma'iyah, when Allah, for example, He knows what every soul, He's close to the servant in his jugular vein, and all these other texts, they are in a very, very general sense. So Ibn Rajab goes on to explain that there are many other texts similar to this which indicate Allah is near to the one who obeys Him, the one who fears Him, the one who safeguards His limits, the one who observes His rights. So whoever does this, then he will find Allah to be in front of him in every situation. So therefore, what does this mean? That he will always feel that he has company, that there is a company, that there is a nearness and relationship. So he says, فَاسْتَأْنَسْ بِهِ وَاسْتَغْنَى بِهِ عَنْ خَلْقِهِ. So because he knows that Allah is with him, in front of him, then he will not feel the need of the companionship of anybody else. Meaning that this closeness and this friendship and this nearness will make him do away. He will not feel strange and he will not feel isolated, because he knows that this company is the best of all company. And then there is a hadith which Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah mentions in Al-Silsila As-Sahih, which is authentic, which is أفضل الإيمان أن يعلم أن الله معه حيث كان. The most superior part of Iman, or the most excellent type of Iman, is that a servant knows, is that a person knows that Allah is with him wherever he may be. Right? So in other words, this is a belief that you have, a solid belief that Allah is with you wherever you may be. And this belief is the most superior or most excellent part of Iman. أفضل الإيمان أن يعلم أن الله معه حيث كان. So this now is the second part of the hadith. احفظ الله تجده, you will find him أمامك, you will find him in front of you. Right, so this is the first advice. The first advice to Ibn Ābbās radiyallahu anhuma as a young man in the madrasa of the Messenger of Allah is to safeguard Allah, to safeguard the rights of Allah. Now, the second piece of advice, and all of these are connected in a sequence as we shall see. This hadith is an amazing hadith because all of these things are tied together in a way that Ibn Rajab will explain in due course, inshallah. The second, قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم تعرف إلى الله في الرخاء يعرفك في الشدة. So this now is the second piece of monumental advice given to a young man, which is acknowledge Allah in times of ease, and He will know you and recognize you in times of severity, in times of hardship. This is a very, very important lifelong principle that can be given to a young boy or a young girl. It is a principle of life. In fact, as we shall see, it is a principle that you implement in order to prepare for the moment of death. As Ibn Rajab will explain. He says, Al-Ma'na, the meaning here is, أن العبد إذا اتقى الله وحفظ حدوده وراعى حقوقه في حال رخائه وصحته فقد تعرف بذلك إلى الله وكان بينه وبينه معرفة فعرفه ربه في الشدة وعرف له عمله في الرخاء فنجاه من الشدائد بتلك المعرفة. So this is the ma'na. The ma'na here is that a servant, when he fears Allah and he protects the limits of Allah and he observes the rights of Allah in the times of plenty and ease and good health and affluence and well-being, then what he's done is he has تعرف بذلك إلى الله. He's gained an acquaintance, a familiarity with his Lord. Right? This is how you gain, like Allah knows you, because you've come to know Allah by way of these, by way of fulfilling these, by hifz of His rights and limits and so on and so forth. So now there is an acquaintance between you and Allah. So when this happens, when the servant then is afflicted with hardships, difficulties, and things like that, then Allah, because there is an acquaintance between Allah and that servant, Allah will acknowledge, Allah knows of the deeds he did, and He will save him, He will aid him because of that familiarity that exists between that servant, by way of his worship with respect to his Lord. So again, Ibn Rajab says that just like in the example of ma'iyah, what did we say about the ma'iyah? Ma'iyah is āmmah, to all the creation. Allah is with His creation, with His knowledge, with His hearing. And likewise, but Allah is specifically with His servants, with His ta'yid, with His i'ana, with His nasr. In the same way with this ma'rifah. Although Allah has knowledge of all of His creation, then in this case there is a specific ma'rifah. وهذا أيضا معرفة خاصة تقتضي القرب من الله عز وجل. This type of ma'rifah khasa, when a servant has this ta'arruf with his Lord, then this brings about the love of Allah for His servant, responding to his dua. Right? This is what is meant. And then he mentions the same thing as previously, where he distinguishes between the ma'rifah āmmah and the ma'rifah khasa. So he brings the ayah, هو أعلم بكم إذ أنشأكم من الأرض وإذ أنتم أجنة في بطون أمهاتكم. He is more knowledgeable of you. He knows of you when He brings you out from the earth and when you are, like the fetus in the wombs of your mothers. This is ma'rifah āmmah. And وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ. Indeed, we created man, and we know what his soul whispers to him. This is a general type of ma'rifah. But as for the ma'rifah which is khasa, specific, then this is the one that is mentioned in the famous hadith Qudsi, وَلَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. Right? That's the ma'rifah khasa that exists between the servant and his Lord. My servant never ceases to become closer to me by the nawafil until I love him. Till I love him. And then the hadith continues that if he was to وَلَئِن سَأَلَنِي لَأُعْطِيَنَّهُ وَلَئِن إِسْتَعَاذَنِي لَأُعِيذَنَّ. That if he was to ask me, I would most certainly give to him. And if he was to seek refuge in me, I was most certainly give him refuge and protection. So this is the ma'rifah khasa that exists between the servant and his Lord, in the sense that Allah, even though Allah knows everything about every servant, here Allah gives like a special consideration for the believer in giving him, responding to him, attending to his needs, aiding him, supporting him, and so on and so forth. So this is the ma'rifah, this is a ta'arruf which exists between the servant and his Lord, which is different to the general ma'rifah that is between Allah and His creation. He knows everything about them and their movements and their feelings and their deeds. That's a ma'rifah āmmah. Here this is a ta'arruf which is khas. What is the benefit of this? Now there are some narrations which will explain to us the benefit of this, and it will illustrate what this means very clearly. So he brings the example of Al-Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, who lived in the time of Al-Hajjaj, the tyrannical ruler Al-Hajjaj bin Yusuf. And someone said to Al-Hasan, لو خرجت من البصرة, if only you leave Al-Basra, فإن نخاف أن يضل عليك, because we fear that someone might lead Al-Hajjaj to you. Right? So they were advising Al-Hasan that maybe you should leave Al-Basra because Al-Hajjaj is coming for you, and there's going to be somebody who's going to bring Hajjaj and direct him to where you are. So Al-Hasan al-Basri began to cry. And he said, أخرج من مصري وأهلي وإخواني. He said, I should leave from my land, from my, where I live, my city, leave my family, leave my brothers. And then he said, إن معرفتي بربي وبنعمته علي تدلني على أنه سينجيني ويخلصني منه إن شاء الله تعالى. So he said, indeed, my ma'rifah, my acquaintance and my knowledge with my Lord, of my Lord, and His bounty upon me, directs me or leads me to the like belief and conviction that He will save me and He will relieve me of Him, insha'Allah ta'ala. Meaning that Al-Hasan al-Basri, because of the ma'rifah khasa, or the ta'arruf that he knows there is between him and his Lord, because he safeguarded Allah, meaning His commands, His prohibitions and His limits, that gives him certainty, yaqeen, and assuredness that Allah is going to save me, Allah is going to protect me from this Hajjaj. And I'm staying right here, I'm not leaving my family, my home, my friends, I'm staying right here. So, فما ضره الحجاج بشيء ولقد كان يكرمه بعد ذلك إكراما شديدا ويحسن ذكره. Right, so what happened after that is Al-Hajjaj didn't harm him. In fact, the situation turned such that he even honored him, greatly, and his mention would become good. Another example from the hadith of Abu Hurairah, which is Hasan li ghayrihi, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man sarrahu an yastajib Allahu lahu inda ash-shada'id falyakthur ad-du'a fi ar-rakha." Whoever is pleased that Allah should respond to him, respond to his dua in the times of hardships, then let him make frequent dua in the times of ease. Right? This is the ta'arruf between the servant and his Lord. That when you are in the times of ease, you are frequent in your dua to Allah, and as we shall see, asking from Allah and so on and so forth, isti'anah from Allah, as occurs later in the hadith, then Allah, Allah will aid you in the hardships. Ad-Dahhak bin Qais rahimahullah, he said, اذكروا الله في الرخاء يذكركم في الشدة. Remember Allah in ease, He will remember you in hardships. Look at how, in the case of Yunus alayhi salam, when he fell into the belly of the fish, the whale, what did Allah Azza wa Jal say? He said, فَلَوْلَا أَنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُسَبِّحِينَ لَلَبِثَ فِي بَطْنِهِ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Had he not been from those who glorify Allah, right? This doesn't mean that when he got swallowed by the whale, then he started glorifying Allah. No, this is not what is meant. It means that had he not been previously in his life someone who is constant in glorifying Allah, and that's how he was, then he would have remained in the in the whale until the day of that they are raised. Right? So this is what is meant. Not you remember Allah at the time of hardship, but you are one who remembered Allah in the time of ease all the way through, so that when the calamity comes, then Allah is going to save you. Conversely, what do we see in respect to Fir'aun? What do we see? A person who was a disbeliever, didn't remember Allah, so when drowning came to him, what did he say? Amant. I now believe. فقال له تعالى, Allah said, الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين. Now, now, and you disobeyed before, and you were from those who are, the mischief makers, who cause corruption. Likewise, Rashid bin Sa'ad, he said, a man said to Abu Darda, Awsini, advise me. What did he say? اذكر الله في السراء يذكرك في الضراء. Remember Allah in times of ease, He will remember you in times of hardship and difficulty. Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu anhu, he said, إذا كان الرجل دعاءً, meaning one who is frequently calling upon Allah, making dua to Allah. If a man is da'a'an fi sarra, meaning in times of ease and happiness and so on and so forth, then a hardship comes to him, فَدَعَ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ, and then he calls upon Allah. قالت الملائكة, the angels, they say, صوت معروف. صوت معروف. What do the angels say? The angels say, this voice of this person is familiar, because we are used to hearing this dua from this person. We know, we recognize this voice. فَشَفَعُوا لَهُ. So therefore, they now intercede with Allah. They say, this servant of yours is making dua, it's a familiar voice, even though Allah knows. And so they make shafa'ah, that his dua be accepted. وَإِذَا كَانَ لَيْسَ بِدَعَّاءٍ, and when he is not from those who is frequent in calling upon Allah for his needs and so on and so forth, in the times of ease and hardship and happiness, فِي السَّرَّاءِ فَنَزَلَتْ بِهِ ضَرَّاء, and then some hardship comes to him, فَدَعَ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ قَالَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. So then when he calls upon Allah in that time of hardship, the angels say, صَوْتٌ لَيْسَ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. So we don't know this voice. What is this voice? We don't recognize it. فَلَا يَشْفَعُونَ لَهُ. And so therefore they do not make shafa'ah for this person. Why? Because they don't even know. We haven't heard this voice before. Now this is a hardship, calamity. Now this is a voice we're hearing. So likewise, Ibn Rajab mentions the hadith again of the three men in the cave. And when they got stuck in the cave, each one of them mentioned a righteous deed that they felt that they used to do, or they did, in a time of ease and a time of no calamity. And so therefore Allah responded to them because of that. So now we understand what it means, right? What does at-ta'arruf ilallah fir rakha, what does it mean? It means that this is something that brings about Allah's ma'rifatullah li abdihi. Allah will recognize you, right? So if you make ta'arruf, if you have ta'arruf with Allah, then when you're in a hardship, Allah will recognize you. And so فَلَا شِدَّ يَلْقَاهَا الْمُؤْمِنُ فِي الدُّنْيَا أَعْظَمُ مِنْ شِدَّةِ الْمَوْتِ. What is the greatest calamity that's going to come to you? It's the point of death, right? This is the hardest calamity. So, in other words, where is the discussion leading to? What's the discussion here? The discussion here is this ta'arruf in general is something that as a principle in your life, if you remember Allah, acknowledge Allah and have an acquaintance with Allah in times of ease, then in the times of hardship in your life, Allah will respond to you. However, there's a point where death will come to you, and that is the greatest hardship in the life of this world, where you are most in need of being recognized by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that point in time. And so Ibn Rajab says that فَلَا شِدَّةَ يَلْقَاهَا الْمُؤْمِنُ فِي الدُّنْيَا أَعْظَمُ مِنْ شِدَّةِ الْمَوْتِ. There is no hardship and calamity and severity more grave and serious than that of death. And death, if you are someone who is going to be from the inhabitants of the hellfire, then death is the lightest of the tribulations. Meaning, your tribulation and hardship has only just started. But if you are from the people of paradise, then death is the last of the tribulations, because whatever comes after is going to be made easy for you. Right? So he says, فَالْوَاجِبُ عَلَى الْعَبْدِ الْإِسْتِعْدَادِ لِلْمَوْتِ قبل نزوله بالأعمال الصالحة والمبادرة إلى ذلك فإنه لا يدري المرء متى تنزل به هذه الشدة من ليل أو نهار وذكر الأعمال الصالحة عند الموت مما يحسن الظن المؤمن بربه ويحون عليه شدة الموت ويقوي رجاءه. This is a very important point. He says, therefore it is obligatory upon the servant to make preparations for death before it comes to him, by way of righteous deeds, because he does not know, a man does not know when this calamity of death is going to come to him, in the morning or the evening. You don't know. You wake up in the morning, you leave the house, you would not make it back to your house because Allah has written, your decreed for you to die. You don't know. Nobody knows. So you must prepare for this. And now there's he says here that to mention your righteous deeds, to remember them at the point of death, is something that makes you have a good opinion of your Lord. And it makes death to become light upon you, meaning the experience of death. At the point of death, if you are someone who had ta'arruf with Allah in the way that we described, then at the point of death you can remember these things and other people can remind you of those things, so that the process of death becomes very light and easy upon you, and so that you can have a good opinion of your Lord and you hope in the meeting of your Lord. In other words, what are we saying? We are saying here, what Ibn Rajab is saying, that just like in the calamities and hardships that come to you during life, and because you remembered Allah and you had ta'arruf with Allah, then those became easy. Then in the same way, at the point of death, if you have built up like a, like as Ibn Rajab says, قال بعضهم كانوا يستحبون أن يكون للمرء خبيئة خبيئة من عمل صالح ليكون أهون عليه عند نزول الموت. Listen to what they said. He said, they, meaning the Salaf, used to love that a man should have a secret cache. Secret cache. Cache is like something hidden underground, nobody else knows, only you know where it is. Like something buried, you've hid it in the forest somewhere, you know it's there, nobody else knows it's there. Right? So the Salaf used to love that they have a secret cache or a secret resource, a hidden resource of righteous deeds, so that when death comes to them, then death becomes very easy upon them. Right? Or they would say also, كانوا يستحبون أن يموت المرء عقب طاعة عملها من حج أو جهاد أو صيام. They used to love that they would die after a deed of righteousness that they did. Hajj, jihad, siyam. And likewise, An-Nakha'i rahimullah, he said, كانوا يستحبون أن يلقنوا العبد محاسن عمله عند موته لكي يحسن ظنه بربه. They used to love to, when a person is dying, they would like to remind him of the good deeds he did, so that he can have a good opinion of his Lord. Meaning, so as not to be put to trial at the point, because at the point of death you can be put to trial on account of sins maybe. So they want to make a person keep having husnul dhan with respect to his Lord, and to, get through death with ease. So they used to love to mention to the dying person the mahasin, the good deeds that he did, so that he can have a good opinion of his Lord. قال أبو عبد الرحمن السلمي في مرضه كيف لا أرجو ربي وقد صمت له 80 رمضان. Abu Abd al-Rahman Sulami said, how can I not hope in my Lord when I have fasted 80 Ramadans for him? Right? So this is at the point of death. This is not like showing off or riyah, because this is the last this is the last point in your life that you want to mention this to show off. No, this is because you are having conviction that I worship my Lord, I did the obligations. How can I not hope in my Lord and hope in mercy from my Lord when I have done these deeds, right? It's to have husnul dhan, conviction, and to face death with boldness and to pass through it like this. Likewise, ولما احتضر أبو بكر بن عياش رضي الله عنه رحمه الله وبكوا عليه قال لا تبكوا فإني ختمت القرآن في هذه الزاوية 13,000 ختمة. He said, so when Abu Bakr bin Ayyash, rahimahullah, when he was going to die, and they were crying, everybody standing crying, he said, do not cry, because in this part of the house, I have completed 13,000 recitations of the Quran. Right? So his good deeds, he never told anybody. This is like the hidden treasure that he's bringing out at the point of death, to have husnul dhan and to pass through. And likewise, it is narrated that he, Abu Bakr bin Ayyash, said to his son, أترى أن الله يضيع لأبيك 40 سنة يختم القرآن كل ليلة. So he said to his son, do you think that Allah is going to lay waste to your father having recited the Quran 40 years, completing it every night? And likewise, وقال بعض السلف لابنه عند موته ورآه يبكي. So one of the Salaf, when he saw his son, so he's on his deathbed, and his son's crying, my father's dying. He said, لا تبكي فما أتى أبوك فاحشة قط. Look at this. He said, do not cry, because your father has never committed a shameful deed ever. Right? So this is a father who has maintained his taqwa and his piety, and he's saying that I have never ever committed a fahisha. So why should you cry over me if I die? Right? So he's, this is the dying person saying to the son, don't cry. So Ibn Rajab says, after mentioning all of these narrations, he says, فَمَنْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ وَاتَّقَاهُ وَحَفِظَ حُدُودَهُ فِي حَيَاتِهِ تَوَلَّاهُ اللَّهُ عِنْدَ وَفَاتِهِ. So whoever obeys Allah and fears Him and safeguards His limits in his life, then Allah will protect him in the moment of his death. And He will take him upon Iman, and He will make him firm with a firm statement in the qabr, in the grave, when the angels question him. So from all of this, what Ibn Rajab is pointing out here is that when a believer, when he makes ta'arruf ilallah, meaning that he is acquainted with Allah, there is an acquaintance between him and Allah, then Allah will look after his affairs and make him die upon Iman. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever fears Allah, Allah will make for him a way out. And Qatada said, من الكرب عند الموت ومن أفزاع يوم القيامة. That Allah will make a way out from him, a way out for him from the hardship of death and the awe and the terrors of the day of judgment. So as for the one, وَأَمَّا مَنْ لَمْ يَتَعَرَّفْ إِلَى اللَّهِ فِي الرَّخَاءِ فَلَيْسَ لَهُ مَنْ يَعْرِفُهُ فِي الشِّدَّةِ لَا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَلَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ. As for the one who has no acquaintance with Allah, no relationship, no ta'arruf, nothing like this, that he didn't come to know Allah in the times of ease in his life, times of plenty in his life, times of good health in his life, never made an effort to aid the cause of Allah and to invoke Allah, to seek aid from Allah, and so on and so forth, then he has nobody to help him in the times of hardship, times of calamity in this life or the next. So this is the end of that part, at-ta'arruf ilallah. So this now is the second piece of advice. First is hifz. Second is at-ta'arruf. Now the third, what did he say? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Ibn Abbas, he said, وَقَوْلُهُ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. And when you ask, then ask from Allah. So this now is, it's like Tawheed. أمر بإفراد الله عز وجل بالسؤال ونهى عن سؤال غيره من الخلق. So he ordered Ibn Abbas here to single out Allah in asking. And he prohibited him from asking others from the creation. And in fact, in the Quran, we see وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. It's a command from Allah, وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. And ask Allah of His bounty. Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 32. And from Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, he said, صَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ أَن يُسْأَلْ. Ask Allah from His bounty, for indeed Allah loves that He should be asked. And likewise, from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu in the hadith, مَنْ لَا يَسْأَلِ اللَّهِ يَغْضَبُ عَلَيْهِ. Authentic hadith, Sahih ibn Majah. Whoever does not ask Allah, He becomes angry with him. And in another hadith, ليسأل أحدكم ربه حاجته كلها حتى يسأله شسع نعله إذا انقطع. Let one of you ask his Lord for every need, until even, like, you know, on the sandal, you have the leather strap or the strip that goes between the toe, the big toe and the other toes, or the individual toes. When that snaps, or when it breaks, until even that, then you should make dua to your Lord and ask Him for that. Ask Him for everything. There isn't anything too small to ask of your Lord. Why? Because Allah, He is the creator of all things. He is the placer of all the ways and the means. So ultimately it is Allah that's bringing everything to you anyway. So display your need and your want of Allah by making dua to Him for every single one of your needs, no matter how small. So he says, وَفِي هَذَا الْمَعْنَى وَفِي الْمَعْنَى أَحَادِيث كَثِيرٌ. There's many other ahadith which are similar in respect to this, where they command you to ask Allah. On the other hand, he says, وَفِي النَّهِي أَنْ سُؤَالِ الْخَلْقِ أَحَادِيث كَثِيرَ صَحِيحًا. Conversely, there are many ahadith that prohibit you from asking from the creation. And he says, وَقَدْ بَايَعَ النَّبِيُّ صلى الله عليه وسلم جماعة من أصحابه على أن لا يسأل الناس شيئا منهم. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq wa Abu Dhar wa Thawban. He even took the pledge of allegiance from many of the companions. Pledge allegiance to me that you will not ask anyone for anything. From them Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Abu Dhar, Thawban. And this was ingrained in them to such a degree that if one of them, he had, like, the whip or the khitam of the camel, the thing that and it falls to the ground, فَلَا يَسْأَلْ أَحَدًا أَنْ يُنَاوِلُهُ إِيَّهُ. Right? He wouldn't ask anybody, can you pick that up, give that to me? He would get it himself. Right? To such a degree that it was ingrained in them that they wouldn't ask anybody for anything. Now, there's some beautiful points where Ibn Rajab explains. He says, وَأَعْلَمْ أَنَّ سُؤَالَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى دُونَ خَلْقِهِ هُوَ الْمُتَعَيَّنْ عَقْلًا وَشَرْعًا. He said, know that asking Allah as opposed to His creation is something that is specifically indicated aqlan wa shar'an. It is something rationally indicated, and it is something legislatively indicated. And this is shown by numerous angles. Then he goes on to give maybe 4 or 5 points to explain why this is so. And we'll summarize them. First of all, what's the reason? First reason why it is rationally and legislatively specified that you ask only from Allah. أن السؤال فيه بذل ماء الوجه وذلة للسائل. Asking is something that is, it is something that involves you showing some humiliation and lowliness, and you having to, your face just being in the position of asking. It is something that's only befitting for Allah, right? Because when you ask, then it's a type of dhillah, for the one who's asking. This state that you are in of asking, وَذَلِكَ لَا يَصْلُهُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ وَحْدَهُ. This does not befit anyone except Allah. This type of dhul, is only befitting for Allah because it is ibadah. Al-ibadah wal-mas'ala, worship and asking, seeking, this is only for Allah. And this therefore is a sign of true love. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah used to say, look at this dua of Imam Ahmad. He used to make dua to Allah, Allahumma kama sunta wajhi anis sujudi li ghayrik fasunhu anil mas'alati li ghayrik. Imam Ahmad used to say, Oh Allah, just as you have protected my face, my head, my face, from making sujood to other than you, then likewise protect it from asking from other than you. Right? So with sujood, you're prostrating with your face to Allah. Likewise, when you ask someone, you are asking with your face. Is that not so? You go to someone, you look them in the eyes, and you ask. And when you ask, it's kind of like humiliation and lowering yourself and displaying a type of need to the creation. It's like, it's humiliating. So Imam Ahmad is saying, just like you protected me from not prostrating my face to other than Allah, likewise protect my face from asking from other than you. So we see that the Imam, the Sahaba, the Imams of the Salaf, they clearly understood this. The Sahaba would not ask anyone to help them pick up something that they dropped. And Imam Ahmad likewise. Now, there's an amazing thing mentioned here. He says, وَلِهَذَا الْمَعْنَى كَانَ عُقُوبَةَ مَنْ أَكْثَرَ الْمَسْأَلَ بِغَيْرِ حَاجَةٍ أَنْ يَأْتِيَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَلَيْسَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ مُزْعَةُ لَحْمٍ. He says, now, if you reflect upon this meaning that we are commanded to ask only of Allah, and we are prohibited from asking other than Allah. He says, this meaning, when we understand it, we will understand another hadith which mentions the punishment for those who frequently ask people and display their need of people. They ask them. It could be money, assistance, this, clothing, this, whatever. They ask people. These types of people, in fact, there's an authentic hadith in Sahih, I believe it is Sahih Muslim, in Muslim, Bukhari and Muslim. ما يزال الرجل يسأل الناس حتى يأتي يوم القيامة وليس على وجهه مزعة لحم. This is a hadith that a man never ceases to ask the people until he will come on the day of judgment with there not being any piece of flesh on his face. No flesh on his face. Why? لأنه أذهب عز وجهه وصيانته ومنائه في الدنيا فأذهب الله من وجهه في الآخرة جماله وبهاءه الحسي فيصير عظما بغير لحم ويذهب جماله وبهاؤه المعنوي فلا يبقى له عند الله وجاهه. Look at that. He says, why is this? Because this man, in the life of this world, whatever respect, whatever goodness, whatever was on his face, he stripped it from his face by asking this one, asking that one, asking this one, being in need of this one, right? So the dignity, the honor, the good, it was slowly stripped, conceptually speaking. And then when he comes on the day of judgment, what will his appearance be? It will just be bones. You'll see bones, no flesh. Right? And this is the outcome in the hereafter of the deeds in this life, because you lowered yourself, you humiliated yourself, you showed lowliness in front of others besides Allah. So when you come on the day of judgment, that honor, dignity, what would have been on your face has now been taken away from you. Right? So this is the first reason, first wisdom or reason, or way in which aql and shar indicate that we ask only Allah, and it's probably ask other than Allah. The second one, when you ask Allah, you are asking from, it is ubudiyah. It is a type of ubudiyah. You are showing your enslavement to Allah, you are showing your need to Allah, you are acknowledging Allah's qudrah, Allah's power over fulfilling the needs. Right? But when you show the same thing to other than Allah, this now is dhulm. This is dhulm. Right? Showing ubudiyah to Allah is adl. It is justice because it is in its place. When you go to a creation and you show your lowliness and ask, this now is dhulm, because this is in other than its proper place. Why? Because effectively you are putting that person, you are giving him the status of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is a person who has no qudrah. He has no independent power over himself or anything else in the creation. And for that reason, it's as if by going to him, lowering yourself, removing dignity from your face, humiliating yourself and asking and displaying your need or whatever, you are effectively, it's like you are putting him in other than his true place. That's why, look at what some of the Salaf said. قال بعض السلف إني لأستحيي من الله أن أسأله الدنيا وهو مالكها فكيف أسألها من لا يملكها من لا يملكها. Indeed, I feel shy from Allah that I should ask him from the world, yet he is its owner. Meaning, even though Allah is the owner of the world, I still feel shy that I should actually ask him. So how then would it be from someone who doesn't own anything? Right? Meaning that, even though we shouldn't feel shy in asking Allah, because we are commanded to ask Allah for everything, yet you still feel shy from the one who owns the earth and everything, then how can you not then feel shy from asking other than Allah when they don't own anything? Do you understand? It's like, you should have more shyness, you should have more respect and keep away from that. This is the second indication from aql and shar' why we ask only from Allah. The third, أن الله يحب أن يسأل. Allah loves that he should be asked, and he hates that he should not be asked, as we saw in the hadith earlier on. So he wants from his servants that they be in need of him and ask him ask him for everything, and he loves those who make dua to him. As for the creation, they are the opposite, and we all know this. Why? He says, وَالْمَخْلُوقُ غَالِبًا يَكْرَهُ أَن يُسْأَلْ لِفَقْرِهِ. Mostly speaking, you find that the creation, when you go and ask them, they're not happy. And they don't want to. Why? Because they feel their own need, their own poverty. And generally, when you go around asking people, it makes them uncomfortable, and this is the nature of man. Man is, thinking about himself. He is in need, right? He does not like to be asked, whereas Allah loves to be asked. Allah becomes angry if you do not ask him. Mankind become angry if you ask them, right? Most of them, right? So this is another indication from aql and shar' that we ask only Allah, we don't ask other than him. The fourth one, he says that the fourth one is what happens. Allah descends to the lowest heaven at the last third of the night, and what does he say? He says, هَلْ مِن سَائِلٍ فَأَعْطِيهِ. Is there anyone who asks that I may give to him? So this is a legislative proof. Likewise, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When your servants ask concerning me, then I am close. I respond to the invocation of the caller when he calls. Right? And then there are some narrations that Ibn Rajab brings. For example, a statement from Maymun bin Mahran. He saw some people gathered at the house of some of the leaders, and he said, whoever has a need from the Sultan and the Sultan prevents him, then indeed the houses of Ar-Rahman are open. So speaking about those people who go to the Amir or to the Sultan, I need my need fulfilling, and maybe they get turned away, maybe the need is not fulfilled. So he's saying that the houses of Allah are open. Open. Let him come to the mosque, let him pray 2 rak'ahs, and let him ask his need. And likewise, he said, Bakr al-Muzani, he said, Man mithluk ya ibn Adam. O son of Adam, who is like you? Whenever you wish, متى شئت تطهرت ثم ناجيت ربك ليس بينك وبينه حجاب ولا ترجمان. Who is there like you, O son of Adam? Whenever you wish, you can purify yourself, you can call out to your Lord without there being any veil or any translator between you and your Lord. Right? Showing the privileged position for the son of Adam. He's able at any time to make wudu, stand in front of his Lord, there's no barrier, no translator, no intermediary, and ask him of the need. And then finally, he mentions one story of another man, Thabit al-Bunani, rahimullah, that a man came to him and said, I need to go to a qadi, and I want you to intercede on my behalf with him, because I have a need from that qadi. So they went out on the journey to go to that town or that city. Every time they passed by a masjid on the path, Thabit دخل فصلى فيه ودعا. He stopped, went there, prayed, made dua to Allah. And what happened is that delayed them in reaching the majlis of the qadi, the sitting of the qadi. So this man said to him, look what you've done. I had this need from the qadi and he's gone. So Thabit said, ما كنت إلا في حاجتك فقضى الله حاجته. He said, I was not except, meaning aiding you in your need. So Allah then fulfilled his need and he was not in need of the qadi. Meaning that due to this dua, due to this displaying of need to Allah, then Allah Azza wa Jal fulfilled that particular need. Right, so this now is su'al, asking from Allah. So we have hifz, first of all. Then we have ta'arruf ilallah. Now this is as-su'al, the third major piece of advice that the Messenger of Allah gave to Ibn Ābbās. Then, وَقَوْلُهُ صلى الله عليه وسلم وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Ibn Rajab explains like the sequence in the hadith. He says, لما أمر عليه السلام بحفظ الله والتعرف إليه في الرخاء. When the Messenger of Allah commanded with the hifz of Allah, safeguarding Allah, and ta'arruf ilayh, meaning creating a relationship with Allah, an acknowledgement and acquaintance with Allah, and this is by al-ibadah. Then he asked him, ثم أرشد إلى سؤال الله وحده ودعائه. Then he directed them to ask only of Allah. Do not ask the people. And dua is ibadah, as we see in the hadith of Nu'man bin Bashir. Then he said, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ in the hadith. After all of these advices, what did the messenger do? He said, أَرْشَدَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ إِلَى الْإِسْتِعَانَةِ بِاللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ. He then directed him to seek aid only from Allah. This piece of advice is also found in the Quran. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek aid. This one ayah, Ibn Rajab says, he says, وَهِيَ كَلِمَةٌ عَظِيمَةٌ جَامِعَةٌ يُقَالْ إِنَّ سِرَّ الْكُتُبِ الْإِلَهِيَّةِ كُلَّهَا تَرْجِعُ إِلَيْهَا وَتَدُورُ عَلَيْهَا. He says, indeed it has been said, these are mighty comprehensive words, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And it has been said, indeed, like the secret of all of the revealed books returns back to this statement and revolves around this statement. Meaning all of the revelations of Allah that He revealed upon the prophets and messengers, every single one of those books, everything in those books revolves around this one statement here, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Then he says, in this isti'ana, which the messenger commanded Ibn Ābbās, he says there are two benefits. There are two benefits. The first of them, أن العبد عاجز عن الاستقلال بنفسه في عمل الطاعات. First benefit is that the servant is incapable by himself of doing these righteous deeds without aid from Allah. And the second, أنه لا معين له على مصالح دينه ودنياه إلا الله عز وجل. Second is that there is no one to aid him and to support him on the beneficial interests in this life and the world, except Allah Azza wa Jal. فَمَنْ أَعَانَهُ اللَّهُ فَهُوَ الْمُعَانِ وَمَنْ خَذَلَهُ اللَّهُ فَهُوَ الْمَخْذُولُ. So whomever Allah aids, he is the aided. And whomever Allah abandons, deserts, he is the deserted. And then he goes on to mention numerous texts, a hadith with this ma'na. From them is, for example, the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, احرص على ما ينفعك واستعن بالله ولا تعجز. Be eager for that which will benefit you, seek aid from Allah, and do not feel meaning do not feel incapacitated, or do not feel at a loss. لا تعجز. Do not sit back and do nothing. And he also used to make in his khutbah, Alhamdulillah, nasta'inuhu wa nastahdih. Right? All praise to Allah, we seek his aid. And likewise from Mu'adh bin Jabal radiyallahu anhu, it is mentioned that he would never ever leave off saying after every prayer, Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Oh Allah, aid me in your remembrance, your gratefulness, and your good worship. And likewise, from the dua of the Messenger of Allah was, Ya Rabbi a'inni wa la tu'in ali. Oh Allah, aid me and do not aid against me. And likewise in the qunut, we see that Umar used to say, radiyallahu anhu, Allahumma inna nasta'inuka wa nastahdik. Oh Allah, we seek your aid and we seek your guidance. So, from all of this, al-abd muhtajun ila al-isti'anati billahi fi fi'l al-ma'murat wa tark al-mahdhurat wa fi sabri al-maqdurat. So look at the connection between in the hadith. The first part, ihfadillah yahfadhk. Right? We are commanded to safeguard Allah. What does that mean? It means to do the commands, keep from the prohibitions, and stick to the limits. However, we cannot do that except by way of al-isti'ana. So this is why al-isti'ana came as part of the hadith. Right? Hifz, ta'arruf, su'al, isti'ana. That's why we commanded in the hadith. Because we need the aid of Allah. We cannot do without it in worshipping him and safeguarding him. So this is why in the hadith, Ibn Ābbās was given this advice, which indicates the completion and the perfection of the advice. Likewise, we see all the prophets. What did Yaqub alayhi salam say? He said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. In that time of difficulty, Yaqub alayhi salam, he said, then patience is beauty, beautiful patience. And Allah is the one from whose aid is sought from that which you describe. These same words were said by Aisha radiyallahu anha in the ifk that they fabricated against her, and Allah freed her from it. What did she say? She said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. And likewise, Musa alayhi salam, what did he say? He said to his people, Ista'inu billahi wasbiru. Seek aid from Allah and have patience. And our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told, قُلْ رَبِّ احْكُمْ بِالْحَقِّ وَرَبُّنَا الرَّحْمَنُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. He said, say, O my Lord, judge with the truth, and our Lord is Ar-Rahman, from whom aid is sought against that which you say. Right? So we see the prophets, the messengers, we see them making isti'ana from Allah in terms of difficulty, hardship, in terms of worship, in everything. Likewise, Uthman radiyallahu anhu, when he was granted the tidings of paradise, when he was told that you are going to be put to trial and basically you're going to be killed by some people, he said, what did he say? He said, Allahul Musta'an. When those hypocrites came to kill Uthman, what did he say? They came to the house, they began to spill his blood, and he said, La ilaha illa ant, subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin, Allahumma inni asta'inuka alayhim, wa asta'inuka ala jami'i umuri. He said, La ilaha illa ant, there is none worthy worship except you. glorified be you, I was from those who did wrong. O Allah, I seek your aid against them, and I seek your aid in all of my affairs. Meaning that as he's being killed and murdered and his blood's being spilled by these people, he is making isti'ana with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that brings us to the end of that section on al-isti'ana. So what we should note then about the advice of the Messenger of Allah to Ibn Ābbās is that he began with 4 things, which is hifz, safeguarding Allah, at-ta'arruf ila Allah, which is making this acquaintance with Allah and familiarity with Allah. Then there is a su'al, asking only of Allah and not asking others. And fourthly, seeking aid, al-isti'ana. Because without al-isti'ana you cannot do what came before. Now this leads us to the next part of the hadith. وقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم جف القلم بما هو كائن وفي الرواية الأخرى رفعت الأقلام وجفت الكتب وفي الرواية الأخرى وجفت الصحف. So then, in various versions of the hadith, the essence is that the pen has, the pen has been raised, and the ink has dried, or the book has dried, in relation to whatever is going to happen. So Ibn Rajab says these statements here that you see in this part of the hadith, this is like an expression that is being used by the Messenger of Allah to show the nufudh al-maqadir, meaning that whatever has been decreed is going to be executed, is going to be fulfilled, whether you like it or not, right? And that all of this is in a book, because and likewise the similitude which is being given by the Messenger, that when a book, when it is written and it's ended and the pen is raised and the pages, like dry ink is dried, it's like an expression which the Messenger used from what we see and observe to show that everything has been written, it's been decided. And so the point behind this is to put into the understanding of Ibn Ābbās and his ummah for whom the advice is directed, to show that what is in the Quran, ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها. Right, to put this belief firmly in our hearts, which is there is no affliction on the earth nor in your souls except that it is in a book before we bring it into existence. Inna dhalika ala Allah yasir. Indeed, that is easy for Allah. And he brings some narrations to show that the first thing that Allah created was the pen, and then he said to it, write. What shall I write? Al-Qadr. And then everything that is to happen until the establishment of the hour. There's some narrations like this and a hadith like this which you are familiar with. The hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ مَقَادِيرَ الْخَلَائِقِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَخْلُقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ بِخَمْسِينَ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ. Indeed, Allah wrote the decrees of the creation 50,000 years before He created the heavens and the earth. Right? So meaning, here in this part of the hadith, the Messenger of Allah is implanting a firm belief that everything that is to happen has already been written in the decree of Allah. And likewise, another hadith from Abu Darda from the Prophet ﷺ, فرغ الله إلى كل عبد من خمس. This is authentic hadith, Sahih al-Jami al-Saghir of Al-Shaykh al-Bani rahimahullah. Allah has already completed with respect to every servant 5 things. So for each one of you, 5 things it's already done. It's already done. Min ajali, your lifespan, already decided. Wa rizqi, your provision, the provision that's going to come to you. Wa athari, meaning his amal. Now what are going to be the traces that he's going to leave behind of his deeds? Wa madja'i, his deathbed. Where is your deathbed going to be? Wa shaqiyin aw sa'idin, and whether he's going to be happy or he's going to be wretched. And also the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, خلق الله كل نفس وكتب حياتها ورزقها ومصائبها. Allah created every soul and has written its life and its provision and its calamities and hardships already written. And so this is, so now we have to understand what's happening here, because it's all connected, as Ibn Rajab will explain. So we started with hifz, and then there's ta'arruf ila Allah, then there's su'al and isti'ana, which is like from tawheed, and we need al-isti'ana to achieve the rest. Then in the middle, there is a belief being implanted in the heart about al-qadar. And then what comes next is something that ties the whole of the hadith together. And this is what we'll try to finish with, inshallah ta'ala, in what remains. So he says, وَقَوْلُهُ بَعْدَ هَذَا فَلَوْ أَنَّ الْخَلْقَ جَمِيعًا أَرَادُوا أَن يَنْفَعُوكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَقْضِهِ اللَّهُ لَمْ يَقْدِرُوا عَلَيْهِ وَإِنْ أَرَادُوا أَن يَضُرُّوكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَكْتُبْهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ لَمْ يَقْدِرُوا عَلَيْهِ. So after implanting this belief in al-qadar, everything has been written, your provision, your calamities, your hardships, your action, everything's already written. He then, following on from that, he said, if all of the creation together, gathered together, desiring, wishing to benefit you in something which Allah has not decreed, they will not be able to do it. And if they all gathered together to harm you with something that Allah has not written, they will not be able to do it. So now, Ibn Rajab explains that he intends by this to show that the servant, whatever harms him, whatever benefits him, is only that which is muqaddar alayhi, that which has been written for him. It is not possible for anything which Allah has not written to afflict him, nor anything to pass him by which Allah has written for him. And this is, so when you believe this firmly, look at this in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal is ordering them to say, قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. This is the believers in Surah At-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 51. Say, nothing will afflict us except what Allah has prescribed or written for us. And likewise Allah said, قُلْ لَوْ كُنْتُمْ في بيوتكم لبرز الذين كتب عليهم القتل إلى مضاجعهم. Say, even if you were inside your homes, then you would be made to come out for the, to be killed at the place in which your deathbeds have already been decreed. Right? And likewise the hadith, which is Hasan, related by Abu Darda, إن لكل شيء حقيقة وما بلغ عبد حقيقة الإيمان حتى يعلم أن ما أصابه لم يكن ليخطئه وأن ما أخطأه لم يكن ليصيبه. He said, indeed, everything has a reality, and a servant will not acquire the reality of Iman until he knows that whatever afflicted him was never going to miss him, and whatever missed him was never going to afflict him. Meaning that you cannot have Iman, there cannot be the haqiqah of Iman except with this firm knowledge embedded in your mind, in your heart. And then, now this is where we want to make the connection now. So I'm going to finish with this, inshallah ta'ala, because here Ibn Rajab, in the next page or so, he connects the hadith together. So he says, واعلم أن مدار جميع هذه الوصية من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لابن عباس رضي الله عنه على هذا الأصل وما بعده وما قبله متفرع عليه. He says, know that all of this advice from the Prophet ﷺ to Ibn Abbas is built upon this foundation. Right? So those advices, the hifz, the ta'arruf, and the su'al and the isti'ana, those advices were given on the basis of an asl, a foundation. What is that foundation? That's mentioned in the second part of the hadith. What is it? It is al-qadar, the pens have dried, the book has been written. no one can gather together to benefit you in anything if it hasn't been decreed. No one can gather together to harm anything if it hasn't been decreed. Right? So because of that fact, that's why the Messenger gave those advices. Those advices are built upon this belief, this firm belief, and revolve around it. Then he explains, he says, فَإِنَّهُ إِذَا عَلِمَ الْعَبْدُ أَنَّهُ لَنْ يُصِيبَهُ إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَهُ مِنْ خَيْرٍ أَوْ شَرٍ أَوْ نَفْعٍ أَوْ ضَرٍّ وأن اجتهاد الخلق كلهم جميعا على خلاف المقدور غير مفيد شيئا البتة علم حينئذ أن الله تعالى وحده هو الدار والنافع والمعطي والمانع فأوجب ذلك للعبد توحيد ربه عز وجل وإفراده بالاستعانة والسؤال والتضرع والابتهال وإفراده أيضا بالعبادة والطاعة لأن المعبود إنما يقصد بعبادته جلب المنافع ودفع المدار ولهذا ذم الله سبحانه من يعبد ما لا ينفع ولا يضر ولا يغني عن عابده شيئا. Okay, so there's a lot there, but it's very important. So he says that when a servant knows, if you have a firm belief, like Allah has told us in these ayat, that nothing is going to afflict me except what Allah wrote for me, of good or evil, benefit or harm, and that even if the creation, all of them together, strove together to try to bring something other than what Allah decreed, that will not benefit at all, right? Once he has that firm conviction in that belief, which is related to Al-Qadr, that will then make him have another type of knowledge, which is that only Allah is An-Nafi, Wal-Dar, Wal-Mu'ti, Wal-Mani, right? That then makes him have that firm belief that only Allah is the one who benefits and harms, who gives and who takes. And once that is there, this will then it will force in the servant to enact Tawheed, to single out Allah, his Lord, in seeking aid from Him alone, asking from Him alone, humbling himself to Allah alone, lowering so all these affairs of Tawheed he will have in his heart, and he will worship only Allah and obey only Allah. Right? This is very clear now. So firm belief in Al-Qadr, you know that the creation is helpless, only Allah can aid. If you know that, then this makes you worship Allah upon Tawheed and to lower yourself only to Him, not to the creation. And now he goes on to explain another thing, which is worship. Why do we worship Allah? We are worshipping Allah لأن المعبود إنما يقصد بعبادته جلب المنافع ودفع المدار. Right? Why are we worshipping Allah? Because Allah commanded us, because that is the way by which we get benefits and repelling harms. Right? So we're worshipping Allah because Allah will repel the harms and bring about the benefits. Now, so I want you to keep the train of thought going here, because this helps us to understand why many people, why Allah has rebuked and criticized in the Quran those who worship that which does not benefit nor does it harm. Right? Because many people who do not actualize this part of Iman, which is this firm belief in Al-Qadr, they don't actualize this. We see that because of that weakness, they do not put obedience to Allah in front of obedience to the creation. Right? So we see them, they seek benefit, harm from the creation. But when a person actualizes this belief and he singles out Allah and he knows that only Allah benefits, harm, gives and takes, this will lead him to be obedient and to worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he will put obedience to Allah ahead of the obedience to everyone else from the creation. Right, so I want you to keep all that in mind, and now he's going to explain. He says, this wasiyah al-azima al-jami'ah, this great mighty piece of advice that brings all of these things together, it brings all these things together, because when a servant safeguards Allah, meaning His limits and His rights, and this is the first thing that came in the wasiyah, in the advice. Then after that, what follows on from that? It is that Allah will then safeguard the servant. Right? And this is what we actually seek from Allah. We want from our Lord that He safeguards us and protects us and looks out after our beneficial interests. Then after that, He mentioned at-ta'arruf ilallah, in times of ease, and that this is something that leads to Allah recognizing you in the times of hardship. And now this is where we need to make the point now. In the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions about the mushrikeen. What is about the mushrikeen? فَإِذَا رَكَبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Right, when the pagans go on the ocean and it gets rough, right, they call upon Allah sincerely, in the time of hardship. And when فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. Now when He delivers them to the land, then they commit shirk again. Whereas what Allah Azza wa Jal commanded, or the Messenger commanded Ibn Ābbās, is the opposite of that. The opposite. Right? So they remember Allah in the times of hardship when they know only Allah can benefit and save. So here in the wasiyah to Ibn Ābbās, it is ta'arruf, like make acquaintance with Allah in the times of ease, so that in the times of hardship and difficulty, so that Allah will aid you. So we are different from the mushrikeen. We remember Allah, we seek aid from Allah in times of ease, so that Allah, and likewise in times of hardship, but Allah will aid us because we used to call upon Him and worship Him in the times of ease. So then He gave the advice of ta'arruf, and ثم عقب ذلك بذكر إفراد الله بسؤال. Then He followed the advice by mentioning that only Allah should be asked. وإفراده بالاستعانة. And to seek aid from Allah only, to seek assistance from Allah. And this is both in times of hardship and both in times of ease. And then after that, after these 4 pieces of advice, He then mentioned ثم ذكر بعد هذا كله الأصل الجامع. What is the uniting what's the principle underlying all these things that brings them all together and upon which all of these matalib are built? What is it? It is that Allah Azza wa Jal, is singled out in benefit, in harm, in giving and taking, and that nothing will afflict a servant except what Allah has decreed. So all of it comes back down to what? It comes back down to qadr. Right? A firm, unflinching belief in al-qadr, that whatever afflicts you was never going to miss you, whatever misses you was never going to afflict you. And if the whole of creation gathered together to conspire against you, to bring you some harm, it will not harm you unless Allah has decreed it. And if they come together to benefit you, they will not be able to do so except if Allah has decreed it. Now, if you think about it, as Ibn Rajab explains, what effect does this have upon the servant? He says, وتحقيق هذا يقتضي انقطاع العبد عن التعلق بالخلق وعن سؤالهم واستعانتهم ورجائهم بجلب نفع أو ضر وخوفهم من إيصال ضر أو منع نفع. Right? So what does this effect does this have on a person? It basically makes a person to have not any attachment to any of the creation. You're not tied to them. You're not needy of them, of asking them, seeking the aid, hoping in them, want them to bring benefit, repel harm, or to fear them from any harm that they might bring. Right? So this then causes and forces a person to single out Allah with obedience, with worship, and to put his obedience against everything else. Now, to finish off, we'll finish off with 2 ayat in the Quran to show how this conviction led the prophets and messengers of Allah to have such conviction that they were able to challenge an entire nation that stood against them. Right? If you have this conviction and you act upon what is in this hadith, then the effect of it is perfectly illustrated by 2 ayat in the Quran that Ibn Rajab brings at the end of this section, where he says, First one is from Nuh alayhi salam. وَقَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى. In fact, before that, let's mention another verse. قُلْ أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِنْ أَرَادَنِيَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ هَلْ هُنَّ كَاشِفَاتُ ضُرِّهِ. Say, those that you call upon besides Allah, if Allah wishes for me any harm, are they going to be able to remove that harm? أَوْ أَرَادَنِي بِرَحْمَةٍ هَلْ هُنَّ مُمْسِكَاتُ رَحْمَتِهِ. Or if Allah desired for me any mercy, are they able to prevent His mercy? قُلْ حَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ يَتَوَكَّلُ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. Sufficient for me is Allah, and upon Allah do those who place their trust. Right? This is to our messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? This conviction standing in the face of the people of disbelief. But illustrating here with two examples, look at the statement of Nuh alayhi salam. He said, إِن كَانَ كَبُرَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَقَامِي وَتَذْكِيرِ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ فَعَلَى اللَّهِ توكلت فَأَجْمِعُوا أَمْرَكُمْ وَشُرَكَاءَكُمْ. So he says, if my station, my position that I'm in, and me reminding you of the ayat of Allah, if this is something big to you and something, something big upon you, then upon Allah do I place my trust. فَأَجْمِعُوا أَمْرَكُمْ وَشُرَكَاءَكُمْ. Now he's making a challenge. Right? If you think that this, what I'm calling you of Tawheed and obedience to Allah, this is something so great, offensive and challenging to you, then go ahead. Unite your affair, get all your partners together, meaning he's making a challenge now, right? Gather your affair, get your plan together, get all your partners, then they come. Right? So meaning that this is one man making a challenge to an entire nation of disbelievers, that if this is what my call, if it's challenging to you, get together then. Come all of you and come, let's stand. This is a challenge, right? Second example is the example of Hud alayhi salam. And this is one of the examples that the scholars mention, that this is from the miracles of the prophets and messengers, that a single man can challenge a whole nation. So he says, قَالَ إِنِّي أُشْهِدُ اللَّهِ وَاشْهَدُوا أَنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّمَّا تُشْرِكُونَ. Say, he said, indeed I call Allah to witness, and you to witness that I am free from that which you the shirk that you commit. مِن دُونِهِ, with those besides Allah. Then he said, فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ لَا تُنظِرُونَ. Then he said, then plot all of you together, all of you come together, make your plot, conspire with each other, and then don't delay, come to me. Inni tawakkaltu ala Allah, Rabbi wa Rabbakum. Indeed, I rely upon my Lord, Rabbi wa Rabbikum. He is my Lord and He is your Lord. Right? So this is now a challenge to an entire nation of disbelief to come together, conspire, plot, do whatever you want. I rely upon my Lord. Right? So the point being that this station reached by these prophets and messengers, and likewise the same thing said to our prophet and messenger. How does that come about? It comes about by what is in the wasiyah of Ibn Ābbās. Right? It is hifz of Allah, safeguarding His rights, His limits. It is having ta'arruf with Allah. It is asking from Allah. It is isti'ana from Allah. And then all of that is built upon what foundation? The pens have dried, the pens have been lifted, it's all written. And the firm conviction, which is from Iman, remember the hadith? That the haqiqah of Iman is that a servant knows that whatever was going to afflict him was going to miss him, or whatever miss him was going to afflict him. That's the foundation of all of these other things. When you have that absolute firm conviction, then you don't need to fear anybody or anything, and you will not have any grief or anxiety or sorrow. It produces that strong, Iman, by which you have this type of conviction, right? Against the people of disbelief. At the point of death, you don't fear death, right? Because why? You had a khabi'ah, a secret treasure that you built up of good deeds that you kept for that moment, right? So we have to stop there, although there is more to the hadith, and there is more, the bit about sabr, we're going to have to leave that. But as you can see, absolutely tremendous, mighty hadith. This is a hadith it's the prophetic teaching to a young boy in his household. And, inshallah, we should give attention to this hadith and, all the benefits from this. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us tawfiq in comprehending and acting upon what we have been through. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.